Hello, everybody. My name is Max, and welcome to another B2 First Speaking lesson. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at the second part of part 3. We're going to see what we have to do in this part, how we should answer the questions, what kind of languages we need to use in order to be successful, and we're going to take a look at sample answers as well in this video. So, without any hesitation, let's begin. All right, so let's take a look at this part. So this is a follow-up question, just like part 2. If you remember, in part 2, you had a follow-up question. In this part also, you have a follow-up question, but this one is a little bit longer and requires both of you, the candidate, the other candidate, and you talk to each other in order to answer this question. Now, this question is related to something which we call it most, best, easiest, superlative adjectives. It's going to be related to that. For example, if the topic is related to health and the questions are around health, and the examiner can ask you something like this. Now you have about a minute to decide which of these things can benefit people the most. So usually they're asking you about, let's say you have to come to a conclusion or a decision that one of these options from those 5 options around the question is the best. So you have to come to a decision, which one is the best. Sometimes they might ask you 2 of them. Decide which 2 would be the best for town, for this health, for blah, 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 blah. So you have to choose 2. Sometimes you have to choose 1. And you have 1 minute to talk. So you don't have 2 minutes. This is a 1 minute discussion. So it's less, it's let's say 50% less. So you have to just come to a decision. But this part can be challenging for some reasons. Challenging for those, they don't know what to do in this part, because 1 minute sounds a lot to just decide on one. You can say, okay, I think this one is the best because of this. And the other candidate says, yeah, that's true. And I think that's one is the best because of that. 20 seconds, finished. You have 40 seconds left. So what should we do in this case? That's why there are many techniques that I develop in this part, and I'm going to teach you how to do it so that you don't dry up, you don't finish early, so that you can come to, let's say, to the decision after a couple of seconds, more than 20. Now, let's see how we should do. First of all, do not decide on the answer too soon. As I mentioned, it would lead to dead air. First, what you can do, there are 2 things you can do in this part. First of all, you can start by eliminating 2 or 3 options and giving reasons. For example, the examiner asks you which one is the best option. You start with saying which ones are the worst. You see, you do the opposite. You say, Max, but it's not relevant. But actually, it is relevant. Why? Because you're eliminating those that are not good, so that you can move to the best one at the end. And you say, for example, I think the eating a lot of meat is not good for our health, so I don't think this is a good option. And then you ask question, what about you? Do you think that, for example, exercising would be beneficial? And the other students start talking and says, well, I think, yeah, exercise can be really beneficial because of this, and he asks you a question. So in that case, you first start by eliminating one of the options and you move the conversation towards the one that is really the one that you want to decide. Now, this is one way to do this. To start eliminating some options and then move to the one that is the best. Now, another thing that I really love doing is by you try to always start this part, okay? How you can do it, you have to start by asking your partner a question. What question can you ask? Exactly the same question as the examiner asked, but a little bit change it. For example, it says here, now you have about a minute to decide which of these options or which of these things can benefit people the most. Now you can start with this. All right, so what do you think would be the best option? What do you think would be the most beneficial option? You say this question, you ask this question, and you let your partner start talking. Now you might say, why should I do that? There's a reason behind this. When you let your partner talk, first of all, you did the communication. You started giving the opportunity to your let's say, for example, the other candidate to start talking. Now, in some cases, the other candidate is nervous. The other candidate doesn't have enough level. So he says, well, I think this one is the best. That's what all he said. So in that case, what should you do? Again, you ask another question. Why do you think it's the best? Give them the opportunity to talk. So you do this 2 times. First, you ask a question to give them the opportunity to talk. He says, blah, 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 blah. If he didn't talk too much, you again ask why, give them the opportunity to talk a little bit, or says, why do you think that? And he says a little bit more, and then it's your time to give your opinion, whatever that he said or she said. If it's the same option, okay, if, for example, he talked or she talked about the option that you are also going to say this is the best option. So in that case, you don't have anything to do. You just have to first show agreement and disagreement with your partner, and then try to say other benefits of that option as well that comes to your mind. Say other benefits of that same option. Now, again, you will have much time. You will have at least 30 seconds left in that situation. So what you can do in this situation is trying to talk about other alternatives. How? You can try to do something like this. You can start suggesting other options. Okay, you say, well, I'm sure that exercise, as we agreed on, would be the best option available, but I think sleeping would also be really beneficial too. What is your opinion? And you see, just you said which one is the best, but you can also try to move the conversation somehow towards the next option, so you have some time to a little bit talk about that option as well. All right. Now, should I finish after 1 minute, or when we came to the discussion, like when we came to the decision, should we finish? Well, no, again, you should you should finish whenever the examiner says thank you. So do not finish early. Let the examiner says thank you. And now there is another scenario that whatever you say, the other candidate is, like they say, is disagreeing with you. So whatever you says, he disagrees or she disagrees. So you cannot come to a decision. You say sleeping is the best. I said, no, exercising is the best. So what should I do in this situation? Exactly, this is a situation that some of my students faced. And what you can do in this situation is, okay, there is no problem if your partner has different opinion than yours. So not a problem. You don't need to reach to a decision, okay? You just have to say, okay, from my perspective, I think this is the best because of these options, and yours is not the best because of these options. And he says the same thing. He says, okay, I think your option sucks. My option is the best because of this. But remember, you should be very polite. You should bring reason why his option is not good and your option is better, and try to be very polite and try to be friendly when you're saying this, and try to bring some reasons why you think your option is the best. And at the end, I think you use one of those languages that I taught you. And of course, here, I'm going to again teach you again those languages, like, I think we're going to have to agree to disagree. And you somehow finish the conversation just like that. And probably if the time is up, the examiner will say thank you. If the time is not up, suggest an alternative option and try to keep the conversation a little bit moving forward. And you can also eliminating options that are not good. And you can, for example, you had like 20 seconds left and you decided that this is the best. He said, no, this is the best. In that case, you don't have anything more to say. You just suggest another option and says, well, I think this option is not going to be the best as well, because I think this option has these disadvantages or these problems or blah, 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 blah. So you buy that 20 seconds for yourself by saying some negative things about the other option. Remember, you do not need to talk about all the options. You can talk about only 2 of them and that's it, or 3 of them and that's it. You don't need to, again, start conversation. Okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. No. You just have to come to a decision which one is the best. So in that case, you don't need to talk about all of them. You don't have time to talk about all of them, and you cannot come to a decision at the end. So it should not be like that. You cannot talk about all the options. You just have to talk about the options that you feel like they're good, or you have something to say about them and you can support why it's the best, why it's the easiest, why is the safest, and try to bring some reasons for why the other option is the worst. Remember, you can agree, you can disagree with your partner, not a problem. It's not necessary to have the same opinion at the end. If you don't have the same opinion, it's even better. Why? Because you have something to say against his option and you have something to say about your option. So the discussion will continue more. But if you both have the same opinion at first, probably you don't have much to say, but you have to do the things that I told you. You have to just talking about the other options and suggesting other options, talking about the other options a little bit and saying maybe this option is not good because of this. And that's how you finish the conversation. Now, let's take a look at an example, a real sample test. Let's see how they're doing. Be very careful of how they're doing it, what kind of questions they ask, how they start the conversation, and how they suggest alternatives in case of not having enough time.
Now you have about a minute to decide which idea would be best for the town.
Okay. So what do you think is the best idea for the town to do?
I think building holiday flats, maybe.
Yes. Why do you think that?
Because all the tourists like to have flats to stay.
Yeah, but maybe the parks are just are a better idea to provide because they're really nice to just have a walk in and enjoy the nature with your friends and family.
Yes. So if you like providing parks, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I do think that's a good idea. Yeah, but also the holiday flats, I think, is a good idea because you have to have space for the tourists to live in. So if there's no space, there probably won't be a lot of tourists. Yeah.
Thank you. Can I have the booklet, please?
Very good. Let's try to watch it one more time and see how they're doing it. So at first, if you look,
For the town.
What do you think?
You see how she started it? Florine started by asking a question, giving the opportunity to the other candidate to talk so that she can then lead the conversation, so she can say something. Now, if it happened to you, the other candidate does the same thing, not a problem. It's not, nothing is going to happen. If the other candidate starts talking, you can also try to all do the other things that I mentioned. But if you have the opportunity to start and asking question at first and giving the opportunity to the other person to do it, that's not a problem because in any case, you want them to talk at first. That's your position. You want them to say something and then you react to what they say, right? So in both cases, if they started themselves, that's fine. If they didn't, you start and you ask them a question. Try to be fast and you try to start it and ask them a question related to the topics.
Is the best idea for the town to do?
I think building holiday flats, maybe.
So she didn't say a lot, right? Marie didn't say a lot. And now it's time to ask another question.
Yes. Why do you think that?
Why do you think that?
Because all the tourists like to have flats to stay.
So she said her opinion. It was not enough, but not a problem. You ask your two questions. Now it's time to move on and talk about your opinion and try to say, to react to what your partner says. When I say react, I'm not saying fighting. I mean, you have to show agreement, disagreement, and also talking about your opinion.
Yeah, but maybe the parks are just are a better idea to provide because they're really nice to just have a walk in and enjoy the nature with your friends and family.
Yes. So if you like providing parks, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I do think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Now they don't have anything more to say. You see, they dry up because the other candidate is not suggesting anything. Now that's the time that Florine comes up with the, let's say, technique that we talked about, right? She's trying to move to the another one and suggesting other one to say the alternatives about that one, whether it's good or bad idea.
Yeah, but also the holiday flats, I think, is a good idea because you have
also this one is a good idea because
you have to have space for the tourists to live in. So
supporting it with a reason.
So if there's no space, there probably won't be a lot of.
Now you
If there is no space, let's see what she said.
If there's no space, there probably won't be a lot of.
There won't be a lot of tourists. So she used the conditionals here, and it's a very good reason. You see, you can use conditionals here to talk about your reason somehow. It's a hypothetical reason that you're creating here, a hypothetical situation. It's not a real situation. You're just imagining that situation, and it's very good in this part to use conditionals. Try to learn the second conditionals. In this part, it's absolutely amazing. You can create many good sentences with second conditionals, which the first part is in the past, the second part is with would. If you had a lot of money, I would, for example, if I had a lot of money, I would buy a house. This is the second conditionals, right? First part, simple past, second part using would plus base form of the verb. Definitely is really good because you're talking about an imaginary situation which doesn't exist and it's related to the present. It's really good, and try to use this language in this part. Okay, now let's take a look at some more examples. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take a look at different theories as well, which is mentioned here. The first one is suggest which option you would choose, say why, and ask your partner if he or she agrees. This is one other theory or other, let's say, method, sorry, not theory, method that you can use in this part. Or there is another method which you disagree with the first option, your partner suggests, say why you disagree, and then suggest another option and say why. This is also a good technique you can do. You can, for example, your partner says, well, I think visiting to a park theme is very good, theme park is very good because of this, and you say, well, I have to disagree with you on that part because of this, and I think a beach activity day would be the best, and blah, 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 blah. And then asking your partner question, and he talks about it, and then if you came to a decision, well, that's great. If you didn't, not a problem. Now, let's see how they are doing this part. Let's see what they are going to do. They're going to choose which one is the best choice for a trip. Which one is the best one for the trip in camping? Let's see what they use.
Miguel and Antonia.
Well, Antonia, in my opinion, the best choice for the trip is the camping and walking activity in the mountains, because it'll be an adventure for everyone. And if it goes well, everyone will enjoy it. What do you think?
I think your suggestion would be fine if the weather is good, but no one will enjoy it if it rains all the time, and it's a lot of responsibility for the teachers who are supervising the trip. I think the beach activities trip is a better option, because at least the kids will be staying in a hostel if the weather turns bad.
Okay, so you see that she tried to show disagreement with what she said, with what he said first, and then she tried to suggest an alternative, suggest another option, and saying why this one is the better option. Because, for example, she said, because at least the kids will be staying in a hostel if the weather turns bad. So this is also another option. But again, it's not enough. Like, how much did they talk? They talked about, let's say, 40 seconds. They still have 20 seconds left. So these 20 seconds, you can also talk about the other option. Of course, Miguel can also again talk after this for 20 seconds. Miguel can say something about a beach activity. He can talk about it and says, well, you're probably right. A beach activity might not be, or for example, camping and walking activity in the mountains might not be as good as beach activity as you mentioned. You have some right, and I think I changed my mind or something like that. And saying he can just try to bring some reasons for supporting what you mentioned, or try to, for example, object what you mentioned, try to say something the opposite. Now let's see how they are doing with the same theme. This is another theme. Let's see what they are doing in this part. This one is agree with the first option your partner suggests, but then suggest an alternative and say why.
Irene and Nikolai.
Okay, I think we should choose the theme park because all teenagers enjoy the thrill of a theme park, And it gives everyone plenty to talk about and discuss before and after they go.
Yes, I think you're right. But I think we should also consider the visit to the museum because that might be more popular with the teachers, and we have to take their preferences into consideration as well.
You might be right, but I think we should put the students' taste first, because it is their trip.
Maybe, but they can go to a theme park in their own time.
Yes, of course they can. But sometimes it's important to do these activities as a school group.
Very good. As you can see, they disagree with each other, and it's 100% fine, nothing wrong with it, and you can just try to do the same thing and nothing is going to go wrong. But you always need to have some kind of a reason. You see, when they disagree, they have a reason. They don't say, well, I don't think that's a good idea and that's it. No, they say, of course, they can sometimes blah, 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 blah. Or for example, said, I think you're right, but I think we should also consider the visit to the museum because that might be more popular with the teachers, and we have to take their preferences into consideration as well. Then Irene says, you might be right, but I think we should put the students' taste first because, again, reason. Why? Because it is their trip. Then Nikolai said, maybe, but they can go to the theme park in their own time. So you see, it's a very good conversation. They're trying to come up with reasons, come up with why this is not a good option, why this is a good option. And at the end, if you have different opinion, that's completely fine. But you should use a language to clarify that, how you came to the decision at the end, which we're going to take a look at these languages right now. So when you want to suggest an option and say why, you can use some languages like, in my opinion, the best choice is blah, 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 because then you can develop the reason. Or I think we should choose blah, 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 because. And when you said it, when you finish your reason, ask your partner if they agree or disagree. It says, what's your idea? How do you feel about that? And you say blah, 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 blah. Don't you agree? Blah, 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 blah. Do you have a different opinion? Blah, 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 blah. Or maybe you know more about it. And you give the opportunity for the others to agree or disagree. They can agree, they can disagree, not a problem. Whatever they said, you just try to react upon that. You just say, okay, fantastic. You said, for example, you said, no, I disagree. I don't think that's a good idea. And you react just like Nikolai and Irene. We can say the same thing. Well, you might be right, but I think blah, 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 blah. Then you say what you think and what you believe and why you feel like that. Now, in case you want to disagree with a suggestion and saying why, here are so many good languages here. For example, you can say, I think your suggestion would be fine if we take this into our consideration, that it's blah, 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 but you're right. Or I'm not sure about that because then you come up with the reason. Or I must take issue with you on that. You're partly right, but I think this option has more blah, 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 blah because of blah, 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 blah. Come up with the reasons easily. It's not a difficult thing to come up with reasons. And the next one is unjustifiable to say that. I think we're going to have to agree to disagree. This is also the language you can use at the end. If you couldn't come to a decision and whatever you said, the other partner says another thing. So he says, I think we're going to have to agree to disagree, and end of the conversation. But remember, don't do this too fast. If you have a still 30 seconds left, don't do that. You don't have a timer, remember, in the exam. So you have to just have some kind of a consciousness about how long a minute is, because you don't have timer unless you have your watch, but it's hard to just track 1 minute when you're looking and when you're talking, and you cannot look at your watch basically. So you should have some kind of a consciousness of how long a minute is. Based on that, you just move the conversation if you still have time. And you can also suggest a different option. Like, I think blah, 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 blah option is a better option. Or blah, 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 idea, topic, blah, 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 is a better option because blah, 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 blah. You see, this is how you can move the conversation forward. You saw that, oh my God, we still have 30 seconds and we came to this, for example, decision and we don't know what to say. Use this language. Well, I think blah, blah, blah is a better option because of this. Don't you think so? And he's going to say something as well. Or I think this option has some, for example, benefits as well. Don't you think so? And then you let the other candidate talk about it as well. And that gap of 30 seconds will be done. Remember, this part is not all about language. It's all about how you handle, how you negotiate in this part. You don't need to use a crazy vocabulary in this part. The only thing that matters is how you handle the conversation, how you move the conversation towards a decision, how you're asking questions and how you are trying to talk about different options and suggesting different options, showing agreement and disagreement. These are the things that examiners are looking for in this part. And don't worry if you don't know a lot of vocabulary, crazy vocabulary about the topic. That's not really important. Maybe that's 10% of your score at this part. 90% of your scores, these are the things that we're talking about. How you can handle the conversation, how you can interact with the other person, how you can communicate with the other person and try to move the conversation towards a decision. And you can also agree with a suggestion, but suggest a different option and say why. This is a good language for that. For example, it says something and you want to say yes and then move to another one. You can say, yeah, I think you're right, but this option has also so many good advantages because blah, 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 blah. Or you might be right, but I think we should also consider option B because it has these advantages, blah, 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 blah. And you can, that way you can suggest another one and you can buy some time to talk about other options as well. Now, reaching a decision. At the end, as we mentioned, now it's time to reach to a decision. You said all the things. You don't have much time. You know, it's towards the end. So you can say something like, for example, which do you think would be the best? In that case, at the end. Also, you can use them at the beginning as well. Okay, it's not just for the end of the conversation. Some of them can be used at the beginning. Like I said, you can ask a question. You're starting with, for example, you can say, okay, so which do you think would be the best? And the other person start talking. So shall we choose at the beginning? Are we both in favor of that one? This one, you can say it at the end. For example, you said something, he says something, and at the end it says, so are we both in favor of that one? He says, yeah, I think this is the best option. He says, yeah, I think based on what we discussed, this is the best option. And shall we have these two then? So you talk, for example, the examiner asks you to choose two options. You talked about those two options and you said this option is the best. The other person says also this option is good. The other option is as well. So you came to a decision that both these options are the best. And at the end you say, okay, so shall we have these two then? And the other candidate might say, yeah, I think these are the best options. And that's the end of the conversation. Or you can say, so, or okay, we're agreed on this one. Or right, those are the ones we'll choose. You said something and he said something. Now at the end, he says, right, those are the ones we'll choose. Or in situation where you couldn't, for example, decide on one option, you say something like this. I don't think we agree. So let's leave it that. So leave it at that. It means just let's leave it that. Like you have your own options. I have my own option and that's it. Or let's just agree to disagree. This is also a new language you can use in case whatever you said is different from whatever he or she said. And that's completely fine. You're not going to lose any point or gain any point for having the same opinion or having different opinion. They're not looking for that. They're not looking for agreement or disagreement. They're looking for negotiation towards an outcome. Okay, fantastic. Now you know everything about part 3. In the next video, we're going to take a look at part 4. We're going to go to part 4. We're going to see how to do part 4, what things we expect in part 4, languages for part 4, a lot of examples for part 4, just like this one. and we're going to learn everything about the last part of speaking. So stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next video.